Hi, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, you have week 1 of my tarot readathon vlogs. I have my cards here. I have done my best to shuffle them. I'm gonna pull the first 7 off the top. I think if I keep up the pace that I have been going at in June, I will read more than 7, but I'm gonna give myself permission to slow down. So I'm gonna pull 7 and then come back and tell you which books those align to, because I don't have that memorized. I have to consult my Notion for that. And then if I read all 7 of them before the week is up, I'll just pull a card and that'll be my next book. So I'm gonna pull and then show you. I'm just gonna pull them off the top because I've done my best to shuffle them. So we have the 4 of Rings, which in a normal tarot deck, this is obviously Lord of the Rings themed, this would be Pentacles. So 4 of Pentacles, 4 of Cups, 3 of Pentacles, 9 of Swords. Actually, I like even numbers, so I'm gonna pull 8. 7 of Cups, 2 of Pentacles. I really want something from the Major Arcana, because those are my required reads. 9 of Cups, 1 draw left for the first week here. Oh, finally, Major Arcana. I keep thinking that these are Major Arcana because they don't have just the symbols on them, but they're not. This is the Knight of Swords. So no Major Arcana pulled for this first one. That is okay. Let's go see what books these correspond to. Okay, it took a little bit longer to pull the books than I thought because for 2 of the cards, the books that I had assigned to that prompt, I accidentally already read in June. Whoops. So the first one, I don't actually have the book with me. This is the one for 4 of Pentacles or Rings in this deck. I tentatively have second book in the Inheritance Games trilogy series, etc. down for that. I have holds on both the ebook and the audiobook. I don't know if those holds will come in this week. If not, I'll redraw and put this card back in the deck. And I don't have the prompts memorized, but when I start reading the book, I'll talk about what the prompt actually is. So these next 2 are the ones that I had to switch out. So for the 4 of Cups, this is a book you never thought you would read. And for that one, I'm gonna go with Red Rising. Yes, this is very popular. I didn't necessarily think that it would appeal to me, but I'm gonna give it a try. Originally, I had Fullmetal Alchemist Volume 1 on there. And the reason I know the prompts for these is because I had to go look that up. And welcome the dehumidifier. Okay, the next one was a group of characters or an alliance. And originally I had Mapmaker by Lisa Moore Ramey on there, but I literally just read that one yesterday or the day before. So that one was the one for 3 of Pentacles or Rings in this case. And for that, I've chosen the Bitter Twins. Yes, this is massive, much longer than Mapmaker, but I have actual vacation this week, so it's as good a time as any to try to tackle this one. The rest of these, I do not remember the prompts, but these are the ones that I'm going to try to get through this week. So the next one is the 9 of Swords, and for that one, on my Notion, I have The Chosen One by Echo Brown. Then we have the 7 of Cups, and for that one I have Empire of the Wild by Sherry DeMoline. Then I have the 2 of Pentacles, or in this case Rings, and for that one I'm going to do When You Trap a Tiger by Tay Keller. And then because apparently I didn't have enough Frederick Bachman in June, I'm going to read the last of the books that I own by him for Cups, 9 of Cups. I know things. Anxious People. And then lastly, we have the Knight of Wands, and for that one I'm doing the Chalice of the Gods. I think this was something about a quest. And so I have a really interesting mix that I'm going to try to tackle this week. So these are the books that I'm going to try to get through this week. I have not read a lot of fantasy this past month, and most of the books in here are fantasy. And the age ranges are either adult or middle grade. So, well, technically I think because Percy is high school age, I think technically this is young adult, but it sort of verges on that. I'll count this one as young adult. And then as far as middle grade goes, I do have 2 middle grade books on here, and I have 1 contemporary fiction, and then Sherry DeMoline does fantasy-ish, but it verges into magical realism speculative. I was really nervous about that one, but then I did read Coven, Venko Coven, for Goodreads last year, and then I have a sci fantasy and fantasy that not your typical fantasy. Quite the mix for this week. I am going to hope that there are audiobooks available, but I have regular reading time as well. Oh, I forgot. I do have 1 other young adult, and that's Inheritance Games book 2 as I throw the card, if I'm able to get to that. Okay, it is time for the next update. Yes, the lighting is different, and I don't know whether I like it or not, but the lamp that I used to use has just decided to not turn on anymore. So we'll see how that goes. So I have finished my first book of the Tarot Readathon, and I'm just super excited right now because the results for the Amazing Readathon came out, and for the very first time ever, my team won. Little old general fiction team won. I'm so happy about that. And I'm also happy that I chose general fiction over fantasy because fantasy team came last. Okay, enough of that. On to what I'm actually talking about. I will be in different spots for some of the clips in this vlog, these vlogs this month, but for right now, I'm in my usual spot. And the first book that I finished is The Chalice of the Gods, and I loved it. So this was for the Knight of Wands, which was the last card that I pulled, ironically, and well, for this week at least. And in The Chalice of the Gods, this is like a follow-up. I don't think there's some big overarching impending doom like there was in the original Percy Jackson series and the Heroes of Olympus series. I think this is just nostalgia returning to Percy Jackson. He has to get 3 letters of recommendations to get into New Rome University. And to get these letters of recommendations, he has to complete quests. And so there's going to be 3 books. I thought initially when this came out that there was just going to be 1 book. Nope, there's going to be 3. So I'm really excited about that. There's just something about Rick Riordan's writing and the snark with Percy. It just fits so well. And there's so much nostalgia wrapped up in this book. I love how Rick Riordan talks about relationships in here, both Percy and Annabeth's relationship, Percy and Grover's relationship as friends. Oh, there's a moment towards the end when he has a conversation with Grover that's just like I almost started tearing up, and I'm like, this is Percy Jackson. What are you doing? I can't wait to actually watch the show. I need to watch it. I have not watched the Disney Plus show yet. I haven't watched a lot of scripted shows. Anyway, back on track. This was just so much fun to read. So much nostalgia. Yes, do you have to read the other books? Obviously. But Rick Riordan can do no wrong with Percy Jackson, and this was a hit to start off the month. Now, this is not technically the first book that I finished in July. I finished somewhere between Bitter and Sweet, which is over on my bookshelf over there in the other room. But I started that in June, and I finished more than 50% so that I could count it for the Amazing Readathon. That one, it was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I think I'll probably talk more about that in my wrap-up or sometime this month. I just didn't want to include it in this vlog because this vlog is all about July reads, Tarot Readathon reads, etc. Now, I'm trying to think about what I'm going to do with these. Okay, I'm going to keep the cards in one spot so I don't lose them. I'm going to talk briefly about the books that I have started. I don't know how quickly I will finish either of these because they are both fairly significant. The one that I started, quote unquote, physically, my mom had some rewards points, and so I bought a Kindle version of this because the version of The Bitter Twins that I have is a Broken Binding special edition. And when I read Ninth Reign initially, I just had a regular version of it. And because this of British publishing or something, there's not really an audiobook available of this. So this is probably going to take a while to read getting through this week because I am slowing down on my reading because I really want to enjoy the reads. I love this. I'm only 79 pages into this. That's what I read yesterday, and it's just fascinating. The way that Jen Williams talks about these different creatures there's creepiness factors in here. It's verging on horror, but I actually appreciate it. I see what she's doing there. It makes me a little uncomfortable, but I'm okay with that, which is an odd thing to think about. I'm really excited to see where she's gonna go with this series. A little bit of background. I won't tell you anything about this book specifically because it's book 2 in the series, but Ninth Reign is a fascinating series, and you have several different types of creatures, including a race called the Eborans. They're basically like vampires, but like elvish vampires, but they're not like vampires by vampiric lore. They didn't originate like that. Something happened to this tree god, that the sap, that's what they drank, but something happened to it and it dried up, and so to survive they turned to drinking blood. But that led to consequences, crimson flux, where a lot of them are dying out. And there's also this idea of these different reigns where there's another creature, and it brings in a bit of sci-fi. They're alien-like. They come, but this tree rains down war beasts or something, fights them off, and they go back. Now we've got a problem, because if the tree is dead or dying, how are they going to fight off these other creatures when they come back? And that's Ninth Reign in a nutshell. That's what they're trying to deal with. And there's 3 main characters. I really want to see more of Vintage, who is a human woman. So far we haven't gotten a lot of her, but we probably will further on in the book. There's also Tor, who's an Eoboran, and you have Noon, who is a witch. And the witches are sort of outcasts, but she has like escaped, and for a while in Ninth Reign they travel together, and she's an interesting character. I'm really excited to be getting back into this series. And that was for the 3 of Pentacles, which I think had something to do with weird creatures, but I don't remember. I'll have to look up that prompt. And then the audiobook that I started just this morning after I finished The Chalice of the Gods is Red Rising. I'm trying to set my expectations reasonably, because there are some people whose reading taste I roughly align with have been like, yeah, this is fine. It didn't blow me out of the water. So I'm trying to keep that in mind so that I'm not super disappointed by it. But so far, I'm really enjoying it. Is part of that the accent that the narrator has? Probably. But I'm really intrigued as we're getting into it. Now, the setup of Red Rising, the parts that I've read thus far, only about an hour or so in the audiobook, you know what's happening. You know the outcome. You know things that Darrow, the main character, doesn't know yet. And so it's leading up to it. There's no really suspense for it. But it's set up as this idea of this adult Hunger Games, although Darrow at the start of this book is 17, so not all that old. He is a red. And that's a classification where their job is to terraform Mars, to make it habitable for humans. And what they find out, though, is that Mars has been terraformed for a very long time, and they've just been exploited basically as slave labor. It's a color system, a color ranking system. I don't know if it's been explained what sets up those color systems. Is it the color of the blood, like with the Final Strife? Is it color of like skin or something? I don't actually know what makes up the color system, how they differentiate. There's something physically about it, because I know that something happened to his wife. Yes, at 17 he has a wife, and that leads him to want to overthrow this system and rise up to the level of the Golds, who are on top. And that has something to do with some sort of physical surgery and something. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but so far so good. I'm intrigued, but I've got 15 more hours of the audiobook, not 15 hours at the speed at which I listen to it, but 15 hours at the actual audiobook. So far so good. I'm withholding judgment, but we shall see how this ends up for me. The next clips are probably going to be at my mom and stepdad's, because I do strength training on Tuesday. This is a Tuesday. Going to go over there. And then on Thursday, which is my birthday, yes, this is my birthday week, we are going to do a race. And it just makes more sense to go together from their house, because we're also going to do breakfast, brunch, etc. birthday celebration later that day. So I'm basically going to be at their house from this evening until sometime on my birthday. So the next clips will probably be over there. Okay, so I'm back with another update to the vlog. Same position. I ended up not updating anything while I was over at my mom and stepdad's because I didn't actually finish any books while I was over there. A lot of the thoughts were very similar to what I'd talked about before. I still haven't finished Bitter Twins, but I'm a lot further through. I'm about 55% through that. I did finish Red Rising this morning and I liked it. I am very uncertain as to whether or not I'm going to continue in the series. Not because this was bad, not because I think I'm going to rate it lowly. I actually think this might squeak out a 4.5 stars. It's definitely got a 4 stars for sure. This, everyone compares to a sci-fi version of The Hunger Games. They say it's an adult version. I don't even think it's an adult version. I think it's like young adult. Basically, it's another version of it, and I definitely agree. It has so many echoes of The Hunger Games, so many things that are very similar, but it's not a copycat. It does different things with the similar elements that you see in The Hunger Games, and so for that reason, I think it stands on its own. I think a lot of people might not like this if they're comparing it to The Hunger Games. I could see the echoes of that, but it didn't make things any less for me. Now, there were a few things that I thought, wait, why are you doing that? There was one thing specifically that I thought was a little odd when he's talking about the not characterization. Let me back up. The process for Darrow to go from a red to a gold is absolutely traumatic to his body. So many things done, so much pain that's described in about like the first third of the book. In the last third, basically the beginning of the last third of the book, he gets knifed in the gut, like a sword through the gut. And he talks about he's never felt pain like this before. And I went and I thought, wait a second, do you not remember a handful of months ago when you basically had your entire body changed? That's a minor note, but still I'm just like, wait a second. And I know in the moment, probably we forget things. The basis of the story, the way that Pierce Brown built up all of these different chess pieces on the board, playing pieces, how things are being maneuvered. If the series leans into that political intrigue, then I would definitely pick up the rest of the series. Like all of the other 6 books to come in the original trilogy and then the add-on 4. But I don't know that it does. I've heard that it's gut-wrenching, it's emotional, it's dark, it's violent, and I don't know necessarily if that's for me. So I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to continue in this series, but I did like it enough to recommend it to other people. So that's a win. I still need to enter both this book and Chalice of the Gods for Tarot Readathon. This was for the 4 of Cups. I have not, so like I said, I've gotten to about halfway through the Bitter Twins and I am loving this. It is definitely dark and it's not dark, it's more creepy, and there's this sense of dread over everything, and it's just gotten to a point where I'm like, oh no, that means that this group is going towards that group, and that group doesn't know that this group is coming, and that's probably not going to end well, and we're only 55% through the book. This is definitely a good book. It's going to take me a while to get through, you know, because it's big, and I'm also not rushing it like I have in the past month, which is totally fine. The other thing that I'm going to talk about now, before in this update, are the things that I got for my birthday. One of the gifts I'm wearing, and it's going to be difficult to show the whole part. So this shirt, I'm trying to read it upside down. So basically it says, that's what I do. I read books, and then here it says, I drink coffee and I forget things. If there were ever a more me shirt, I don't know that it exists. So there's another shirt. I think this was a LitJoy offering. I think it came, I got an email, or maybe it was Owl Crate. No, I think it was Owl Creek. I don't remember specifically, but I saw it. I'm like, oh, that is so cool. And I showed my mom, and she wanted the link. And I forgot that, you know, when I do stuff like that, she ends up purchasing me things for my birthday. And there's this one. It's a Jane Austen quote. I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. And it's definitely one that I can wear to work. I'm excited, definitely excited about this one. I also got a Starbucks gift card, which is very helpful, especially going to the beach, because my new favorite local coffee shop is not going to be at the beach because they're not local. I got some money from my grandpa. My cousin, we know each other a little too well. It's really kind of funny. So, oh, I didn't bring it over here, but they got me a mug. So he and his wife got me a mug that and he knows I don't like the regular size mugs. And this is definitely a 16-ounce mug, not a teeny tiny 12-ounce mugs that says introverted but willing to discuss books. Really excited about that, but I left that over on my desk. And they also got me some gum. I don't chew a lot of gum. It's just a family inside joke about this particular gum. And then they also got me this, which I am so excited about. This puzzle is going to be a significant challenge. It is a 3,000 piece puzzle. I'm really excited about that. Now I have two 3,000 piece puzzles. Have I tried any of them yet? No, I'm very nervous. I've got to find a good surface for that. And I've also got to finish the puzzle that I'm currently working on. And I also got 4 books. 2 of them I have read already. And 2 of them are finish out a series that I started last year and have wanted to get the others in the series. So the ones that I've already read that are not adding to my own TBR, we've got I Swear Politics is Messier Than My Minivan by Katie Porter. I'm a huge fan of Katie Porter. I really wish she were my representative, not the one that I have. And then we have The Pomegranate Gate, which I read as an ARC. Well, technically I had an ARC of it and I read it, the audiobook version of it, but this is just phenomenal and I cannot wait to read the second book in the series. Very well done, very intriguing. And then the other ones that I have that everybody got a kick out of, my grandpa joked and said it was the Reader's Digest condensed version. We have books 2 and 3 in the Lycanius trilogy. Book 2, An Echo of Things to Come, is a whopping 716 pages. That's book 2. And book 3 is slightly bigger here. And book 3 is The Light of All That Falls. And that one comes in at 816 pages. So 100 pages more. Do I like big fantasy, big epic fantasy? Yes, I definitely do. So the next audiobook that I have started and I'm over halfway through, because I read Red Rising as an audiobook, really enjoyed that accent like I mentioned before, is Anxious People. I'm predicting right now that that one's going to be a 5 stars. Bare minimum of 4.5 if he doesn't stick the landing. I started listening to that today and just went, wow, Frederick Backman. How is any one person that talented? I don't know. It's not fair. No, it is fair. But I stick by what I said in my mid-year freakout tag. Definitely new favorite author. Okay, in an attempt to mix it up, I've moved out to this location. I have a new shelf over here, which I absolutely love. My mom and stepdad got it, tried it out for a room in their house. Didn't quite work. And so she's like, hey, do you want it? I'm like, sure, it's a bookshelf. Of course I'm gonna want it. So I'm updating, I think this will be my second to last time for this vlog because it is Friday. Tonight I'm going over to my mom and stepdad's again because tomorrow morning we're gonna go down to the beach. I might update once to close out the vlog when I'm there for what I read on the trip down and anything I read on tomorrow on Saturday. Then I'll start the next vlog, which is actually gonna be 2 weeks. It just works out because the computer that I do my editing on over there, it's not a laptop, it's a desktop, so I won't be able to take that down. And then I probably won't be reading as much the week after I get back because that's that summer training week that we have to go to for my job. So I just decided to combine those. Now, I'm gonna update in just a moment. Actually, let me go ahead and update. I've got the 2 books that I'm reading. Well, I just finished this one, and this is Bitter Twins. You can't see it very well. I'm still reading that one, but I'm not gonna take it with me to the beach because I have a an ebook version that I am actually reading, because this is the Broken Binding special edition. I'm not physically reading that copy. I did this morning finish Anxious People, yet another 5 stars. I think I mentioned this yesterday when I updated. There's just something about the way that Fredrik Backman writes that just gets me every time. I loved this so much. Yes, the situation is absurd. So I don't think I ever said anything about the plot of the story in my update yesterday. It's set, basically the trope to get all of these groups of people together is there's an attempted bank robbery that goes wrong because it's a cashless bank. The bank robber is fleeing and makes some wrong turns and ends up in an open house for an apartment, and there's several people there, and it turns it into a hostage situation. It's not supposed to be tense, thrillery, which you would think of as a hostage situation. It's just the trope, the conceit to get these characters together, including the police officers in this very small town who happen to be father and son, and the hostage takers, and the attempted robber, the person who attempts to, you know what I'm trying to say. It tells the story of all these different people and their struggles, which are very normal human struggles, and how they interact. And it's just so wholesome. It was just so brilliant. There was nothing really that I could fault it for. Beartown and A Man Called Ove are still my absolute favorites from Backman. This one is very close to those. He's not had a book that I have read that has not worked for me. I don't have very many left of his. There's Britt Marie Was Here. I think that's the name of it. But it involves Britt Marie, who is a character in My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You She's Sorry. I don't know which comes first. I'll discover that. Then there's the novella, which makes everyone cry. I can't remember the name of it. Then there's book 3 in the Beartown series. So I don't have much left from him, but it's just the kind of writing that is why I read. Bitter Twins, I haven't read any more of that. Not going to update on that. Audiobook wise, I started When You Trap a Tiger. I'm only an hour into it. I might finish that today. I might not. There's a ton of things that I'm trying to get done, like packing and some of this online stuff that we have to do for the training for work and etc. I don't know if I'll finish this today. I might get a little bit farther. I'm already really liking it, but I'm barely into the story, so I'm not really going to update about this. I will most definitely be finishing this tomorrow on the way down if I don't finish it today. That leaves 3 books that I did not get to. I don't have any other copy of this one besides the physical books, so I will be bringing this physically to the beach with me. I don't think that I have an audiobook version of either of these. I'll have to check to see if there's an ebook version, because if there's an ebook version, I'll check out the ebook version so I don't have to cart down the physical books, but I might just bring the physical books with me. So that means that there's 3 books left. So that means I need to do some more pulls for next week's reads, as well as hopefully get more audiobooks, because I've got a ton on there. It just so happened that 3 out of the 7 books that I pulled for this week, no, 4 out of the, because Bitter Twins as well, I didn't have an audiobook for. So I'm going to go ahead in this one and pull the books that I'm going to take with me to the beach, so that way I don't have to worry about that or taking my tarot card deck with me down to the beach. So I tried to do a little bit more shuffling earlier when I thought I didn't have another audiobook before I went on my run, because I knew I was going to finish Anxious People. But it turns out I had this one, and this was on this week's TBR. Just knocked over the box for it. So I tried to do some more shuffling, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the cards, and then I'm going to pause the recording, grab the books, and then that way I can get a little bit further in the packing for the beach week. I've definitely been slowing down my reading pace, so I don't know how many that I want to pull. I'm thinking I might just go ahead and pull 6. So that way I have some wiggle room, and hopefully most of those are audiobooks, so that I can depend on those other 3 that I just showed you for physical reading. I don't know how much reading I'm going to do this week. I haven't even decided. So we shall see. Better safe than sorry, since I will be away from my cards, my books, etc. So I'm just gonna pull from the top here. All right, first we have The Lovers. I'm so glad that I pulled this one. I know that this one is a book that features a romance, and the book that I put for this is Faebound. I've been meaning to get to that for quite a while, and I do have the audiobook of this. That's fantastic. All right, the next one that I pulled, we've got another major arcana here. Last week I didn't get any major arcana. This is The Magician. I forget which book that I put for this, but pretty much this prompt, it involves magic of some sort, and a lot of the books that I have on my TBR involve magic of some sort, but I'll have to look up which book I put for that one. So that's card 2. 3, we have Justice. Oh, you know what? I am so glad that I pulled this one. Wow, I have a lot of major arcana. I know I've shuffled, but it doesn't feel like I have. Okay, so this is, the prompt for this one is dealing with a social issue. I'll have to wait a little while to read the audiobook for this one because my mom has started it, but she will probably finish fairly soon. And that was the Separated by Jacob Soboroff. I'll show the books in a little bit. So, okay, so that's the first 3. Should I shuffle again? Yeah, I'm gonna shuffle again. But so far, my plan to make sure I have audiobooks to take with me is working. And I just realized you can't see me shuffle, but believe me, I'm shuffling. All right, so next we have, another major arcana. I have been shuffling, I promise. And it's The Fool. I don't remember the prompt and I don't remember the book. So I'll go over that in a moment. Card 5, we have the Ace of Rings, which for this deck is Pentacles. I don't remember the prompt or the book for that one. And then the last card that I'm gonna pull for this is the Sun, another major arcana. I don't know how that worked out, but I also don't remember the prompt or anything for that one, so I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I have all the books now. We have Faebound for The Lovers. I have an audiobook for this. We have Every Hearted Doorway for The Magician. I believe I have an audiobook of this. If I don't, it's a small book. We have Separated for Justice. Definitely have an audiobook of this. Originally for The Fool. Oh my word. Okay, sorry. Originally for The Fool, I had The Pain Gap, which is one of my 24 and 24, but I realized I didn't put my Buzzwordathon book anywhere on for any of the prompts, and so I decided to switch it out for The Fool, which is an author you've never read from before, and so I chose my Buzzwordathon book. The thing that made me go, oh my word, is it's signed by Meb Keflezighi, who is my favorite athlete ever. Yeah, this is a book that I bought used. So I know it's not signed to me. That's phenomenal. Okay, I'm super excited about that. So I'm definitely gonna bring this one with me. Because it wasn't on my original TBR, I don't know if I have an audiobook of this or not, but I'm definitely just gonna bring the physical copy with me. Then the Ace of Rings was, the prompt was buy a book or check out from the library a book from your wish list and read it. And so that is The Star That Always Stays. I'll need to eventually take the library covering off of this. I don't know if I have an audiobook of this or not, but it's small enough, it'll be easy to take with me. And then the last one, I don't have an audiobook checked out or available to me, so I'll be taking the physical copy with me to the beach. And that was for The Sun. I don't remember what it was, what the prompt was, because I didn't write that on that part of my Notion, but it's J.R.R. Silver Writes Her World. So these are the books that I'm planning to read over the next week, plus my carryovers from this week. Obviously, I'm going to be prioritizing these because I pulled these first, but I don't think that I have audio copies of any of these, so I needed to have some audio copies. The ones like J.R. Silver Writes Her World that I have physical copies of, only I'll wait to read this one until I have finished the 3 of these. So tomorrow, hopefully, I'll have finished this one, and maybe I will have also finished Bitter Twins. I'm not sure what's going on with the lighting here, so I'll keep this short and sweet because it looks like I'm very dark, but I don't want to be backlit. Let me try something again. Okay, maybe that'll work, maybe not. I'm working with what I can. So it's already Tuesday, and I'm at the beach. Clearly different setup here. I was going to wrap up my vlog for week 1 on Saturday when we got here. Clearly, I did not do that. And I don't anticipate doing very many other updates while we're here. I might do 1 or 2 more, but I'm prioritizing being present with my family and doing different stuff than I normally do, hence slowing down on reading and etc. So I'm going to talk about, I think, 4 more books, maybe 5. I'm going to try to think through what I finished when. And then when we get back on Saturday, hopefully I'll wrap it up. I'll do some rearranging. That means that the week that I'm filming this, there won't be a vlog going up. Normally I would have posted it today when I'm filming this. Obviously I'm not posting it. On Saturday, on the drive down, I did indeed finish 2 books. The first of those I had already started. That was When You Trap a Tiger by Tate Keller. Delightful. Absolutely delightful. It's a prize-winning book. I forget which awards it's won. It's on the cover. I didn't bring the physical book with me. The setup is you have a middle school age kid. Her mom is a single mom. Dad died years ago, and she has an older sister. And they up and move from California to somewhere else, somewhere fairly rural. I don't remember where, somewhere in the Midwest, to be with their grandmother. They find out that there's other stuff going on with the grandmother, and it's very difficult. But there's also magical realism mixed in, and Korean mythology about the tigers, and different stories woven in with that mythology, both, and it could be real or it could just be the way that the main character is coping with the stuff that's happening all around her, and it was just a delight to read. The other book that I started and finished that day, both with the trip and also with my run, was Faebound. I mean, it was a fine book. I probably will keep it. It probably will net a 4 stars overall, but definitely lower than The Final Strife. The world building was so basic in this book. It did not do the inventive things that The Final Strife did. It reminds me, I need to continue with that series. You have both elves, the main characters are elves, and fae. What you know in traditional fantasy about elves and fae, not present in this at all. It's just the name that was present. And you know, there's a light in the closet. Maybe that will help with the lighting. The fact that there are elves and fae, they were just there in name only. It was basically just 2 different races, 2 different groups of people, 2 different nationalities. It could have been any of those. There was nothing distinctively fae or elvish about any of these characters, which it's fine. You can do that, but maybe just make up your own name for it instead of using these already determined fantasy terms. The plot overall, fairly basic. Sorry, that's my watch. I don't really have detailed thoughts to say about it. It was decent. I enjoyed my read. The characters were compelling, but not outstanding. Nothing about it was outstanding. So I finished both of those on Saturday. Next book that I picked up audiobook-wise, I'm trying to remember what that was. Oh, I picked up Separated by Jacob Soboroff. I started Separated on Sunday, finished it yesterday, and that is so well done. It's fairly recent in history. It's talking about the family separation policy that the previous administration put in place, and Jacob Soboroff was a reporter who was on the ground for a lot of it and broke a lot of the news and tracked a lot of this, and his research is very well done. His writing is excellent. It's crafted together very well. I knew a lot of the stuff going on because I'd been paying very close attention to it when it was happening in real time. Definitely well written, well worth the read. As far as what I read physically during this time, I was still reading Bitter Twins. On one of those days, I don't think I actually read anything. I don't think I read anything on Saturday. I read a little bit on Sunday, but I finished Bitter Twins yesterday. I loved it so much. I really also enjoyed slowing down and taking my time with that book because I read that for over a week. And based on how fast I was reading things during the Amazing Readathon, that was very, very different for me. And Bitter Twins is not necessarily the type of fantasy that you would think that I would like. There's a lot of stuff that's fairly gross, that's got a lot of sci-fi-ish elements brought in, but almost in the way that Brandon Sanderson does Cosmere elements, pulling it in fantasy-wise. So it's definitely a sci-fantasy book. It's not straight science fiction or fantasy, but it leans way more heavily on the fantasy side of it. But the way that things expanded in this second one, trying to explain what was going on with the War Beast, with the Juralia, with the group, the Thing, still unexplained. They were fighting in the first one, they're still fighting in the second one. Things were done to some of the characters. One of them, I'm like, I can't believe you did that. And the way that some of the characters are developing, they're so complex. This world, it's so difficult to explain. I think I've already explained it, so I'm not going to take time to re-explain it at this point, because I think I explained it last week. You've got a character. Well, actually, there's one set of characters who are twins. They're the Iborans. One is Tor, one is Hest. Tormolin and Hestilian, I think, are their full names. And they look like they are on opposite sides of whatever is developing. But at one point, you've got a lot of different things going on. You've got a group that's trying to go to this human area and trying to help them. You've got a couple going off to track this ancient historian who kept records. He was an artist that like disappeared into the void. Basically, they're trying to find him. You've got a group that's staying put, basically. And then you've also got the other side. That's all I'm going to say about that. So there's multiple perspectives going on. This is not a book that you can read quickly. The slow savoring was absolutely delicious reading that book. There's no other way to describe it. There were some very, very creepy things. Those things weren't delicious, but you get what I mean. So well done. I cannot wait to read, what's the third one called? Poison Song. Cannot wait to read that. I finished that last night. There were several times when I was reading, last night I was reading in bed, and like right before I went to bed, and I was like gasping out loud with some of the things that was going on. So well done. The next book that I pick up physically is probably going to be the Meb Keflezighi book that I showed unexpectedly had his signature in it. That's one that I don't have an audiobook of. Although, no, actually, I think the next one I'm going to read is the Hawthorne Legacy. Read that physically because that was from the previous week. I got to prioritize that. I did bring Empire of Wild with me, but wait a second. No, I'm not going to read the Hawthorne Legacy. So what happened was I got a skip the line copy of the Thursday Murder Club. I wanted to read that so bad that I looked through all of the prompts to see if there was a book that I could switch it out with. Hawthorne Legacy. I could switch it out with. I am so stretching the prompt, which is like rich people drama or like features rich people. Handful of the characters in Thursday Murder Club. You know, one was a former psychologist. They were talking about building luxury apartments. I'm stretching it. I am making it work. And it also works for this week's significator card. I probably didn't pronounce that right. That's the extra prompt that you can get. And that one is The Fool, which is a new to you author. So by switching out the Hawthorne Legacy for Thursday Murder Club, which I'm reading via audiobook, I'll probably finish that tomorrow on my run, maybe. There's a new to me author. Hawthorne Legacy would not be a new to me author because I've read the first book in the series. The Meb Keflezighi book is going to be a new to me author. I probably, though, will read Empire of Wild. That is a new to me author, and it's from the previous draw, so I need to do this. I'm trying to remember if the J.R. Silver Writes Her World, I've got you sitting on a couple of my books. I'm trying to remember if that was one of the first draws or not. This is going to be my next read. The J.R. Silver Writes Her World, I don't have an audiobook copy of, so I don't know which one I'm going to do next for audiobook, but the one that I'm reading currently is the Thursday Murder Club. I love it. I love it. These adorable, very unique old people solving a murder. The detectives who are coming in to be like, seriously? You dug up a body and didn't tell us? No context on that. I'm loving it. I'm not reading very fast, but I am really enjoying what I'm reading. We're having success on that. Maybe I'll check in tomorrow. Maybe it'll be a couple more days. We shall see what I get up to. Okay, so as you may be able to tell, I am back home. Did not film another update at the beach. It is Saturday evening. I do plan to do a wrap-up clip of all of the books that I read since the last clip, totally had a brain blank there. I did finish 2.5 today on the very long drive that we had home. We weren't able to come straight home because my mom had to reschedule her interview for Global Entry, and so we had to make a pit stop at Atlanta, but it wasn't really on the way. We had to go out of the way, and then it was a 7-ish hour drive. I don't even know the math. That meant I had a lot of audiobook time. So I got 2.5 books finished there, and I finished one physically, like literally physically, not even ebook, which it's very surprising how shocking that is for me. But I'll do that wrap up clip tomorrow. But I am going to start my next vlog, and I've decided instead of doing weekly vlogs, I'm gonna split it into two. Do 2 weeks. Week 1 and 2, which was the vacation week, and then the beach week, and then weeks 3 and 4, which is the work week, and then one last vacation week before school starts back up. So I'm just gonna split it into 2. I'm also probably going to switch up a little bit the timing of when I post things, because I had been posting things at 10 in the morning, and also I just logged on to my YouTube studio because I haven't been touching any of that while I was on vacation, and somehow my wrap up, which I posted a week ago, well, last Sunday, 180 views, which is incredibly high for me. That's like 6 times as much as my videos normally do. Very small channel here, which, oh, you know what? That might be the reason. I think I posted it in the Amazing Readathon Discord. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The reason that I'm gonna go ahead and pull some cards for next week, but not many, is because I have my long run tomorrow and not today, because obviously spent 7 hours in the car. So I need a couple audiobooks for that, because I know that the audiobook that I'm reading, I'll be able to finish, hopefully. Who knows? I may or may not. I may be pulling these preemptively because I believe I have like 7.5 hours at normal speed and I listen on 2.6 times speed. I did have to draw another card because I'd gotten through all of the previous draws that I had, and I ended up drawing the moon. And the book that I am currently reading is The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I'm loving the narrator as well. It's Joe Morton, who I know from one of my favorite shows, Eureka. Very underrated show on the old Sci-Fi Network. So I'm literally at 50% on that one. So I may or may not get to another audiobook tomorrow, but I want to be prepped, you know, going into for the next couple days. But another thing that I think I'm going to do is I'm not going to pull everything at the start, because I have a lot of audiobooks that I have access to. I have like 20 some audiobooks on there, and some of them are like I really want to get to, but I haven't pulled those cards. I give myself more of a chance if I just pull a handful of cards at the same time. So I'm just going to pull 2 cards for tomorrow. If when I go and I check my Notion, both of them I don't have audiobooks for, I'm going to draw another one. Here we go. First card is the King of Cups. Second card is the Ace of Wands. All right, those are very pretty cards too. I'll be right back with the books after I consult my Notion. Okay, so I have the books. I have access technically to both of what I just drew, but one of them I already put the card back. It was the King or Knight of Cups. I think it was the King of Cups. That was After the Forest by Kel Woods. I am still on the wait list for the audiobook, so I don't have access to it. It's a 6-week wait, so I put it back in there, and I drew another one. I do have access to both of what I drew. So Ace of Wands, I forget what the original prompt is, but it's The Vanishing Stare. This was a thrift book copy that I have. Lovely condition there. Part of me is like, yeah, it's just in my library, but why would you sell this? Looking forward to that. This will also help with a pre-booktube series. I believe I started that one because of an SESL list. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, the other one that I drew is the Three of Cups, and that one is Team Chu and the Battle of Blackwood Arena. So these should both be fairly quick reads, and these are going to be my next audiobooks. Physically, I'm still reading J.R. Silver, Writes Her World. I just barely started that. So I'll give a more full update on all of the other books that I read. My clip, which will be filmed tomorrow, we'll talk about everything that I've read up until today. Okay, I'm back in my usual filming location with my usual filming attire. No, it's not Amazing Readathon month anymore, but that's okay. I've realized with the amount of books that I've been reading, just 2 vlogs for the month might not be all that great because I am talking about them a lot. However, that's how my scheduling works out, and I think that next week I'll have less because I'll be working a lot of the day, won't be reading as much. Maybe, who knows? I don't know what next week will bring. I have several books to talk about just since Thursday. So I'm gonna try to go through this rapid fire because I've already done rough edits, not including this clip, and I'm up to about 50 minutes, and that's really long for one of my videos. So I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet. Now, that means that I won't be talking about any more about the Thursday Murder Club, except to say I absolutely loved it. I think the casting has already been known for the Netflix movie, but not since I've read the book. And I saw an image of it. Filming is underway, and I looked at each of the actors they've chosen for the Thursday Murder Club. I'm like, oh my word, that is going to be perfect, and I might actually watch it. So, one of the best I've read so far this month. Not the best. That one's the one I finished today. The next one, this one is interesting. I don't know whether or not it's her writing style or just the genre or the way that she told the story, or if I will like Black Girl Unlimited, which was her debut, more. This has fairly low ratings, and I kind of understand it. This is telling the story of Echo. Ironically, I realized halfway through that the main character has the same name as the author, so I don't know whether this was meant to be autobiographical fiction or not. I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. She is a first-year college student, and she's going to Dartmouth. So that's a lot. And she's struggling with certain things there. There are things that have happened in her past. There are things that are happening, microaggressions and etc. on campus, but it also gets weird. And there's an aspect of her being the quote-unquote chosen one that seem almost like it's mental illness maybe, or the expression of her complex PTSD from the trauma in her childhood, and you don't know what's real and what's not at various places in the plot. And some of it just, I was reading it and I went, huh? She talked about a lot of good stuff, but I don't know what the meshing of this contemporary realistic fiction did with this other, you know, fantastical magical realism aspect. So mixed thoughts on this. I think I'm gonna unhaul this. I think this might end up as a 3-star. It might end up lower. I'm not sure yet. I just finished that Friday, so again, I'm falling behind on all of my reading journal stuff, and I need to get caught up with it. Speaking of another weird book, we have Empire of Wild by Sherry DeMaline. When I got this book, this was the first book by Sherry DeMaline that I owned. This is the only book by Sherry DeMaline that I own. This is the second book of hers that I've read, because I checked out Venko Coven, which was on last year's Goodreads Choice Awards fantasy list, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected. And there was a lot in this book that really intrigued me. And I thought this was a fascinating story. And the weirdness in here, the way that she wove in the Ojibwe beliefs. I think it was Ojibwe. I'd have to go back and look at this. But it's, I believe, set in Canada. So they refer to them as First Nations. And your main character, anyway, I didn't finish that sentence. The way that that is brought in, the non-Western standard storytelling, worked a lot better, I think, for the story and for me as the reader than The Chosen One did. All right, so this book tells the story of Joan, who about 11 months prior lost her husband. Like, they had an argument, he walked out, and he never returned. And so she's been looking for him for this whole 11 months. She's been making some not so great choices. Her life is not doing all that great. She stumbles upon this situation where she sees a person and goes, Victor, which is her husband's name. And that gets all wrapped up in the idea of the Rougarou, which is the First Nations or Native Americans, indigenous version of a werewolf. All of these different lycanthrope type mythologies. There's a lot of them across a lot of different cultures. The Rougarou is the one that goes with this culture. So there's normal stuff, there's society-wide stuff, like different parts of the land that they owned being taken over and developed, and there's trying to hold on to traditions, there's dealing with addiction, and that's mixed with the idea of the Rougarou and this, I don't know what the word is for it, but it's very much real life for these people. Although if you looked at it objectively, it would be like fantastical horror. And the more that I've read books that are sort of on the edge of the genre blend of fantasy and horror and a little bit magical realism, the more I realize that I can deal with that. I can understand that. It's not a turnoff for me in books. Is it going to be a draw for me into books? No, but it's definitely not a turnoff. As opposed to, I don't think I will ever be a fan of slashers or something like that. It was so intriguing and captivating. And you got such a look at all of the different characters in here and what drove them. None of them are squeaky clean. None of them are perfect characters. And then right at the end, she does something, and I knew, because I listened to this as audiobook, I knew there were 9 minutes runtime left of the book, and something happens, and I go, no, really? You did that with that character? Oh, and it leaves it open at the end. It was very well written. This one is going to be staying in my library. This one I don't think is. And I talked about that a lot more than I expected. Okay, next we have Every Heart a Doorway. I finished Empire Wild on my run to start off the day before we drove back. This was the first full one that I listened on the way back. I finished this one as well and started a third. Now, obviously this is going to be short, 175 pages. It's my introduction to the Wayward Children series. And it's fascinating. It's a lot darker. And even though these characters are nominally children, in some ways they are still children, even if they've spent years and years and years in their other world that they've gone through a doorway. They're technically children. But some of the things discussed in here, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely not a middle grade or young adult book. Not that it's bad. I found myself incredibly intrigued with the way that Seanan McGuire built these characters. I will say, okay, let me back up. So the setup for this world is that there are children who have found doorways, like the wardrobe into Narnia, where this door opens up for them, and it can take any number of forms, and it leads them to their perfect world, where they belong. But for one reason or another, the reasons are various and complex. They get kicked out of that world, and a lot of them want to go back. Some of them don't want to go back. But at this school, you have it run by a woman. It's Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. It's the name of the series. She has her own door. She was never kicked out. She came back and forth, and it just won't open for her quite yet. But she wants to help these kids who have been kicked out of their worlds. And you have the main character in this one, the one who's introduced to the boarding school, who is the reader's perspective. She's just gotten kicked out sort of her world, but she doesn't think that she's been kicked out. She definitely wants to go back. She's introduced here. She has this very quirky roommate, and then it turns into a murder mystery, a bit of a murder mystery. And I believe that there are 3 confirmed deaths in here. I knew that there was at least one. I had forgotten about the murder mystery element of this first one until I got to that point and I went, oh yeah, I remember that being talked about. But it's not like a detective novel. It's not, I mean, they're trying to figure it out because they don't want this home to be closed. They don't want to have to go back to their homes where their parents don't understand them. But at the same time, it's about exploring not the worlds themselves, but how the worlds have affected and changed these different people who are in this home. And it's fascinating. Remind me, I said I wasn't going to talk for very long, but we're already at 11 minutes for this clip. Okay, I have 2 more books to talk about. So next we have The Star That Always Stays. I have not taken the library covering off of this, so it's going to shine a little bit. from the synopsis, you get a different idea of what this book is going to be about than was actually in the book. There were inklings of what was in the synopsis, but not the whole thing. So the main character, Norvi, she is like a quarter or half Métis Native American. Her parents have divorced because her dad struggled with a lot of stuff. And it's around early 1900s time, and divorce cast a huge stigma on people. That was the thing that I resonated with. The way that those people treated her because their parents divorced and it was her dad's fault. Being a child of divorced parents that grew up in a conservative area, I definitely resonated with some of the things, even if they weren't so outwardly expressed to me as they were to Norvi. She ends up having to move from their native Beaver Island to a city. I don't ever know where that is. I think it's in the US. I think it's in the Michigan area, because at one point her older brother is mentioned to be in Flint, like Flint, Michigan. So I don't think they're in Canada. I think they're in the US. I expected more to be done about like her Indian heritage, because that's mentioned very specifically in the synopsis. I was going to try to read it, but then I realized I don't have my glasses with me. It was a good book, but it felt very vanilla. It felt very surface level, and she's dealing with a lot of difficult things growing up, trying to find friends, dealing with stigma. It dealt a lot more with the stigma of divorce than the stigma of having Indian blood, as she talked about in there. That's a little bit of the things that are hard to reconcile for me, because I went into it expecting something that the book wasn't. That was a problem of the synopsis. So it's decent. I never was fully like gripped by it, but I think it told a really good story, and she had a stand-up stepdad, really good guy, decent overall book. I think it'll probably get a low 4 stars, so I probably will at some point take the library covering off of it. Not much to write home about. Now, before I get to the last book that I'm going to talk about, my best book so far this month, I'm going to briefly mention I finished The Water Dancer right as I got home after my run this morning. I started into the book that I planned next, and so I started listening to it, and then I went to Storygraph to add it and mark it as currently reading, and I saw that I'd already read it. I read a lot of books, and sometimes I've forgotten if I've read some. I read this book in 2020. That means I need to replace it on the prompt, and I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll just replace it with the next one on the series. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to put book 3 for a different prompt, because technically I had the Thursday Murder Club for a different prompt, but I hadn't pulled that card, and that prompt had a mystery element, and so these are mystery books, so I could put book 3 in that prompt. The one that I did this for was Fills Your Cup with Joy. For me, I interpreted that as I'm moving through goals, getting serious off my list. That could open up to a wide interpretation. So I have plenty of books. I'll look on my audiobook list. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think what I'll do is use the Patrick Stewart memoir for that, because my mom listened to that on the way home and absolutely loved it. She laughed so much. So I know that that will definitely be an enjoyable read, and it's not already on my list somewhere. So I'm going to put this card in that book and read that one for that prompt. Brief switcheroo there. Now we are going to talk about The Water Dancer. This was phenomenal. So well done. The way that Joe Morton narrated the audiobook was like the cherry on top. Already, Ta-Nehisi Coates' lyricism, skill in writing and conveying the story is masterful. But then you have Joe Morton. He just has this voice that draws you in and doesn't let you go. And he's phenomenal at it, which is why I've loved him in everything I've seen him in as, an actor. This story, it has a tiny bit of magical realism. So that's the idea of the water dancing itself. But it is a slightly alternative history approach to life as a slave in the antebellum South, specifically mostly in Virginia, which is where the main character Hiram is born and spends most of his time for this book. And most of it covers a fairly short amount of time, a couple years, 2 to 4 years, I don't know exactly, but it's just so beautiful and heartbreaking and thought-provoking. I don't know that I can say much more about this except to say you need to read this. Ta-Nehisi Coates has a powerful way with words, and if you have the opportunity to listen to it as an audiobook, do it, because Joe Morton takes Ta-Nehisi Coates' already powerful narration and just raises it to a level where you can't argue with it. So this is definitely my favorite book so far this month, and it's probably going to be on my top 10 for the year. It's just phenomenal. So I love that I got to finish the first half of the month with a book like this. So I've brought over all the books that I've read this month, and when I, whoops, they're already falling. So when I try to hold these up in just a moment, you will see why this vlog ended up a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. Next week, we will see what I get into. I am going to pull some more cards. I am going to be tackling, not the Vanishing Stair, but the Patrick Stewart Making It So book and the Team Chew book. The Team Chew book you saw yesterday in an earlier clip, but I'm going to be pulling a few more cards to give myself some options, maybe like 4 more cards, but that's how I'm going to start off the vlog for next week, and we'll see what we get around to. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.